Hello there, and welcome to another Classic Golf Clubs. A treat today as we look at two persimmon woods, a laminated wood, a set of Slazenger Jack Nicklaus irons, and a very nice Dunlop Arnold Palmer putter. Here are the times for the video, in case you don't want to watch everything. I thought for a change we'd start with the irons rather than the woods today. And the set we're looking at are Jack Nicklaus $1 million blades by Slazenger. Jack Nicklaus was on the Slazenger staff for quite a while. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail a little bit further on. But let's get straight into the irons. Nice design, as we can see straight away. A sort of a wingback style, but also with some good weighting at the bottom of the club to aid the launch of the ball. We can also see that these are a pinned head. Around this time, the requirement to pin the heads, which was originally because the glues that were used weren't very good, but into the 1970s and 1980s the quality of the epoxy glues improved and the need to have pinned heads became less and less. Nice ferrule, black with a red top and a thin white band. The shafts have got some light pitting on them. It doesn't affect play, at least not in my experience. I've not broke one yet. On the face we can see frosted around the grooves and some triangles boxing the grooves in. So that's the 3-iron, and just turn that around so we can actually get it the right way up. We can see there Jack Nicklaus $1 million. I suspect that this was in celebration of Jack's achievement of $1 million career earnings, which I think was somewhere around 1969, 1970. The earliest I've found an advert for these clubs is 1971. So they are around about that period. But very nice club. I do like the wingback style. It's one of my favourite styles. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting these out onto the course and having a demonstration. We'll have a quick look at the shaft bands. I've got a photograph of these rather than me waving them around, so we'll have a look at that. So talking about the shaft bands, we can see it's got Plus Slazenger. I think the Slazenger Plus range was originally Slazenger's top of the line models, though like most things it gradually lost some of its glamour and was relegated to the sort of run-of-the-mill clubs. So Slazenger by Jack Nicklaus, made in England, and it's a True Temper Dynalite shaft in regular flex, again made in England. And I think the Dynalite was slightly lighter than the standard weight. And the grips on these, somebody's re-gripped them with a Golf Pride Tour app, which is a grip I particularly like. So, and they're in very good condition still. No need to do any work on those. So in those we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and pitching wedge. I don't have the sand wedge unfortunately, so for the game on the course today I'll be using another Slazenger club from another member of the big three, and that's Gary Player. This is a Slazenger Gary Player, what I call claret jug. That's obviously after he'd won the Open, and these came out in 1962 I believe. Very nice club, very attractive ferrule. Interesting to note that there's no shaft pin on this, even though it's an earlier club, but good solid weight. And as most of us know, Gary Player was a master when it comes to getting out of bunkers, so hopefully using this club some of that might rub off on me. Quick look at the shaft band. Again, it's a personalised Slazenger Gary Player and True Temper. I don't know, it's got a True Temper Pro Fit. It might have had the flex on there at one time, but that's worn off now. The grip on this one is pretty tired, hard and shiny. Could really do with replacing. It's an old Avon grip, just looking quickly at the end there. So that's the sand wedge. That gives us 9 irons, which is a nice set, gets us in out of most positions. So we've got Jack Nicklaus and Gary Player, two of the what were known as the big three. And the only one missing is Arnold Palmer. So how can I bring Arnold Palmer into the equation? Well, two ways actually. One of them is on the woods, or one of the woods, and the other is on the putter. So let's have a look at the putter now. Here's the putter then. It's a flanged blade style. Nice flange on the bottom there. Similar in some ways to the classic Wilson 8802, which I think Arnold Palmer had some part in development of. And as we can see on the sole here, this is, if I can get that in the right angle, a Dunlop Arnold Palmer made in Scotland club. So obviously influence of the 8802 is in this club. It's a nice putter. I've not used it a lot on the course, so I can't really say whether it's one that I put particularly well with, but we'll find out when I do the 3-course playing video. Nice ferrule. We'd like to point out the ferrules. No shaft band on it, but it is a stepless shaft, which is quite unusual, and I think that's the original leather grip on there. Nice grip with a flat top, which is helpful in alignment, and on the bottom we've got the Dunlop D. The first set of clubs that Arnold Palmer designed with Dunlop came out in, I think, 1964, and they were the PowerPoint clubs. So I would think this club is of a similar vintage, sort of early 1960s. So that's the putter. And onto the woods. We've got 3 woods today, different models, different manufacturers. So let's start with the driver. This is an aluminium face model. It's a Titleist driver. Not one of the most famous of the persimmon era, but they did produce some very nice woods. You can see this is a persimmon driver. Can't see the laminations or the sort of the plywood layer. Aluminium insert, 4 screws, aluminium sole plate, and we've got the traditional oil hardened on the bottom there. This small hole here was to allow the addition of lead powder to adjust the swing weight to precisely suit the player. So there was some degree of custom fitting available back then, and we can see on the top it's got nice grain pattern, the crescent coming down to the toe, which is how most persimmon collectors like to see their woods. So this is a nice example. On the shaft we've got a True Temper Dynamic Gold S300U. I'm not sure what that means exactly, and the grip is a Golf Pride, which is getting on a little bit, could really do with being replaced, but it's good enough at the moment. So that's the driver, very nice club. Then on to the second club, which is a 2-wood, and any sort of a persimmon aficionado seeing this groove here will recognise that this is a Ben Hogan influenced club. It doesn't actually say Ben Hogan on it, but it's part of the, well, I think it was some leftover stock from when the arrangement between Slazenger and Ben Hogan collapsed. Ben Hogan first started working with Slazenger around about 1957, which wasn't long after Slazenger went into the club market, funnily enough. It's always a name that I thought was existing for a lot longer than that, but about 1955 maybe was when Slazenger seemed to begin selling clubs. So yeah, this was originally one of the Ben Hogan Powerthrust range. They've kept the Powerthrust on there, but they've lost the Ben Hogan name. There would have been a Ben Hogan signature decal on the top there. So another persimmon club. Again, we can see the grain of the persimmon and we can't see any laminations. So it's a good solid club. 2-wood. Very useful club to have in the bag. As I said in the previous video, this has got a little bit more loft than a driver, so it's easier to get the modern ball airborne. Use your whipping. One thing about this one is that it does have very large screws, which I initially thought had been replaced by somebody, but I've seen quite a few examples of this particular club and they all seem to have very large screws. Plain insert with a white section at the back there. The 2-wood. So we've included quite a few famous names today. The big 3, Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player and Arnold Palmer, and now not directly but certainly Ben Hogan has been mentioned. And finally the 4-wood in the set, and this is another one with Arnold Palmer's signature on. If I can get this around there. It's a Uniroyal club. I think I mentioned these in a previous video. Made in Scotland, and it's Arnold Palmer endorsed, and we can see Arnold Palmer's signature on the top there. Black paint finish, and it's a laminated club. Laminated clubs generally tended to have a paint finish, although you do see some where they have got the plain wood, and you can even more easily tell that it is a laminated club. But here we can clearly see the different layers of wood. And the shaft on this is a Uniroyal shaft, Dynalite, so I would guess that it's made by True Temper. So that's the third wood in the series. I'm doing a lot of rattling about here, clattering the clubs on the tripod and such. So that completes the three woods. Let's have a look at Jack Nicklaus and Slazenger and the relationship they had. Jack Nicklaus has been such an influential figure in golf in the last 60 or 70 years, and even now, 20 or more years after he last played competitively, his name still carries a lot of weight. There's so much to say about Jack, much of it already known and easy to find on the internet, so I'm just going to focus on his relationship with Slazenger, at least as much as I could find. Jack began his association with Slazenger in 1962 at the Piccadilly tournament. This was Jack's first professional tournament in the UK. It was played that year at Hillside, but every competitor played one of their two qualifying rounds at Southport and Ainsdale. And this great picture from the time shows Jack with his caddy, Bill Tomlinson, on the Southport and Ainsdale course. As a side note, Jack later described his decision to play the competition as one of the dumbest of his professional career. He came straight from Fort Worth in Texas, where temperatures were in the 30s, to the cold, wet and windy Lancashire coast. On top of that, he was playing with the smaller ball and using an unfamiliar set of irons he'd agreed to represent. Those irons were by Slazenger. The event was won by Peter Thompson, a set of whose irons feature in my previous video, plug, and only the top 30 competitors collected any money. Jack finished in 30th place with a score of 298 for his 4 rounds, so not his most successful tournament. As a small consolation, however, he did go on to win the US Open that year, the first of his 18 major victories. Before moving on from this picture, if it were of better quality, it might be possible to zoom in and discern that the irons in the bag are actually the Gary Player model, the same set as the sand iron I've just shown in the club review in this video. To help here, I've done the zooming for you, and also shown are the Gary Player irons that appear to be in the bag. At the time, Nicklaus didn't have his own signature set, the first being the Jack Nicklaus World Series model. I'll include some pictures later of the Nicklaus irons I've recorded from the UK market. It's perhaps hard to believe these days, where we have custom fitting to the nth degree, but the top professionals had contracts to play different clubs in the different countries they played in. This later evolved more into carrying the badge on the bag, but in the early days they actually used different clubs. Jack played all McGregor clubs in America, but when he visited the UK, he played his McGregor driver, 3 wooden wedges and his own putter, but he used Slazenger irons. When he went to Australia, he did the same, but he played Australian-produced Slazenger models, which were different to those of the UK. How long Jack continued to play Slazenger irons in the UK, I'm not sure, but this picture from the 1967 Open shows him with the JN67 model. Currently, the most sought-after Jack Nicklaus Slazenger clubs are the result of an unusual agreement between Ping and Slazenger, whereby Slazenger took Ping model putters and stamped their own and Jack Nicklaus's name on the bottom. Models include the Answer, Cushion with a K, Cushion with a C, and the Echo. At that time, Jack was using a Ping putter, although which model I'm not sure. These putters can fetch very high prices due to their perceived scarcity. How many there actually are out there, I'm not sure, but they seem to come up fairly regularly that the price is asked and often realised seem on the high side to me. In the last few months especially, things seem to have gone crazy, with prices in the thousands being asked on eBay, although I haven't seen any of these being sold. Jack Nicklaus clubs continued to be sold by Slazenger into the 1970s. Let's now take a look at some of the irons that were available and try and put some dates on them. Also a couple from Australia and possibly Canada. Dates given are from old adverts in magazines and not necessarily 100% correct. So let's start then with the World Series, introduced in 1964 and the first Jack Nicklaus club by Slazenger as far as I can tell. We've then got its counterpart from Australia, the wonderfully named Champion of the World. And also on the right is possibly a UK version. It has a slightly different ferrule. I wonder if this was made in the UK using components shipped from Australia. Next up we have the Champion with the claret jug, which I suspect coincides with Jack's first Open win in 1966. We've then got another Champion, which I don't really have any idea what the date would be on that. We've then got the JN67, introduced in 1966. And the Plus by Jack Nicklaus, introduced in 1968. The $1 million, as we're featuring in this video. We've then got the JN2000, which as far as I can tell was the last UK model, introduced around 1973. Then another Australian model, the US Open, which I suspect is from the mid-1960s. And finally, what I think is probably a Canadian club, USA Masters, also I suspect from around the mid-1960s. Right, time to get on the course with today's clubs. As usual, here are the lofts for anybody interested. The irons are pretty close to my ideal lofts of a 52 degree pitching wedge and 40 degree 7 iron. Hello there, on the course now with the Jack Nicklaus $1 million irons, starting on short par 3. Thought I hit that really well. Must be a bit of wind up there because it's come up short. Well, there is quite a bit of breeze there. I should have taken at least one extra club. It's about a few yards short of the green. I was attempting to chip with a 6 iron here, but it didn't go as planned. Should have said whilst duffing with a 6 iron, ended up leaving myself a testy little putt that managed to roll it in for the 4. A bit of a low squirty drive that went 190 yards. Got 155 to the second left fairway bunker. I'm going to hit a 6 iron, which will hopefully come up short, aim it to the right, see what happens. I felt hard done by on this shot. My 7 iron, into the same wind that I was playing this shot, had come up 10 yards short, but this one seemed to go 10 yards further. Okay, I've got 130 yards to the front. I'm not going to try and go for it, I'm going to hit a 9 iron, just try and get close. Bit too much sand there. I was trying to take it clean but took a big chunk of sand. Got 70 yards to the front. I'm going to hit the Gary Player sand wedge. Long way short. Another chance to chip. I'm going to be a pitching wedge. Another poor, low, leaky drive to the right that unfortunately found some very deep rough. That first attempt, the grass snagged my club and I only managed to advance the ball about 10 yards, as you can see. Second attempt was a little bit better and got it onto the fairway. I've got 125 to the front, wind behind, so I'm hitting a 9-iron. It pains me to watch this shot. After a couple of reasonable practice swings, I'd just do a horrible siding stroke with no confidence at all and just shank it into the right. Dreadful shank. I'm not even going to finish this hole. Not found it. I'm going to play the new rules of golf. I will finish the hole to show how bad it is. A penalty drop. Play a little 7-iron chip. There's a small consolation. I do manage to get up and down with my chip. Otherwise I think I'd have been putting my clubs on eBay as soon as I got home. That was awful. I'll have the score up in a minute. I've now added up the shots for that last hole and it came to a dismal 8. I seem to make a mess of that hole every time I play it lately. While the score's not great, I paid a heavy penalty for a couple of loose shots and a shank. The summary: 1 bogey, 1 double bogey and a quad bogey. Putting was good though, just 5 putts for the 3 greens. I had hoped to do another classic golf tip, but this video is already longer than I'd intended, so I think I'll skip that. Well, that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope to see you next time.